Hello and welcome to Decorating Pages. I am your host, Kim Wanup. Thank you so much, first off, for everyone. Last week I had a little please rate and review, and thank you so much to everyone who did that because it does make a difference. It's not for my own ego, I promise. It's just that whole game that you have to play with getting rates and reviews, and then, it gets seen more and blah, 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 blah. So thank you. And please, if you haven't, please rate and review on where you're listening to this podcast and on YouTube. The YouTube channel is kind of blowing up lately. If you're not on it, it's something to be seen. People are enjoying it. People say they like it. That's what I'm hearing. So so thank you. Thank you first and foremost. This episode that I have for you, production designer Brandon Tonner-Connolly and set decorator Tafv Sampson, and we talk about FX's The Lowdown with some real Tulsa vibes they give. The textures, clutter, and the truth is in the props philosophy. So there are so many great details and a sneaky little Hawke nod hiding right in plain sight that they're going to tell you about. So I'll get to that in a minute. What Wanup's watching? Well, I'm watching the same stuff basically because I'm in the middle of some really great series. The Amanda Knox trial, I'm still hanging on to that. Murders in the Building. Funny. Alien Earth is awesome. I'm like 1-2 episodes behind because I'm watching it with my husband and he takes some time to get, otherwise I'd be up to speed here and I'd probably be done. But taking my time with Alien Earth, and I'm glad because it's fantastic. Those sets are phenomenal and I can't say enough about it. I was with a friend over the week and we both were just gushing about how fantastic the sets are on that series. So glad to see Jimmy Kimmel back on. And I'm just glad for everyone working on the show also. If you've heard on here, set decorator Heidi Miller talk about the show. And she did talk about how great it was or is just working in that environment and being around, the people who really love working there. So I'm very glad to see that they are back on the air. One thing I am doing, which I haven't talked about, is I am listening. I'm a huge fan of audiobooks. I have a whole episode about books that you should read for filmmaking. And right now I'm listening to My Name is Barbara by Barbara Streisand. And it's 48 hours long. Okay, so I've put it off a little bit because you're like, wow, that's a lot of time. But I'm in. She narrates it. And I am enjoying just listening to her voice because she is just, the way she pronounces, it's Barbara. And so just a fascinating life, and it's sad in the beginning. But she really just, because I'm only at Funny Girl, which I am finding fascinating because she's talking a lot about the filmmaking process and her learning the filmmaking process because it was her first film. So I'm finding that interesting as, someone who works in this about, the experience of someone when it's all new. So that is really fascinating to me. But she describes like every outfit she wore in such detail, even like when she was 19. Like, I don't even know how she remembers this, but she said she kept a lot of journals and everything. So I guess that's what she was writing down. But I am enjoying it. I'm 13 hours in. Of 48 hours. So, I like it. My Name is Barbara. I'm not like, I am a Streisand fan, but I'm not like huge, but yeah, it's good so far. So far, so good. So that's what Wanup's up to. And let's dive into it. Let's get into this episode. So I am talking to production designer Brandon Tonner-Connolly and set decorator Tafv Sampson about FX's The Lowdown. It's a Tulsa story that keeps it close to the ground. We get into the bookstore, the apartment, the diner, and how they used real locations to keep this world and these characters honest. Brandon and Tafv walk through the choices you might not notice at first, like the paper textures, the wall clutters, and it's a plethora. This interview really, I find really well done because they talk about a lot of these characters who are real people and how their keeping that respect and keeping to the story and decorating and designing to both of those and keeping it so true. And like I said, there is a tiny little Easter egg in there to Ethan Hawke. So they get to that. But yeah, Tulsa. Who knew? It's happening. I hope you enjoy. Yeah, I mean, that is kind of the last time I saw you with Julia, which is fun.
I know, that was really fun. Yeah, no, I think that was the last time that we saw each other.
Yeah.
Actually. But yeah, thanks so much for having me on again, and thanks for this fancy graphic.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
I got a whole
cool.
show here for you to be proud of. Proud of this amazing work that you guys have done. I'm so glad that you could join because I actually just put in a different slide because I was like, oh, if I have her, I'm just gonna ask her. So it's
Yeah.
Thanks for inviting me, guys.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I was just saying I'm always down to talk to the decorator. I feel like I bring the decorating to each episode
Right.
if the decorator isn't involved, but it's always
We
better.
know the real nitty gritty here.
It's always good to have the decorator involved, let's be honest. That's where all the work gets done. So I wanted to start off because a lot of the previews say it's like this noir type show and everything. But did that really influence you in the design and the decorating of this?
I mean, I think in terms of, the way the whole thing kind of started is at the end of season 3 of Reservation Dogs, Sterling started talking about this new project he was interested in. And we were talking about movies like The Long Goodbye and Night Moves and sort of like this like new Hollywood era, like 70s kind of noirish world. And he kind of was saying, or we kind of talked about, well, those movies are all kind of like what they, almost like Shaggy Dog, like detective stories, where it's almost like a derisive term, but you're kind of following the detective around through this sort of like loopy vision of a different city. And we just thought, well, what if we did that? But also instead of it being like LA or New York or someplace you've seen a lot, you're following this person through this sort of like really interesting kind of dreamlike landscape of Tulsa, this sort of Tulsa noir. And so from there, that did kind of influence the look of it a bit because it started me thinking about like color palette and started me thinking about like, okay, really want to get to the point where, we can express like what's true about Tulsa in terms of the colors. Like Tulsa is like, it's at the, the crux of the South and the Midwest. So it's like during the summer, it's hot as hell and like, dusty. In the winter, it's very cold and frozen, and there's kind of a lot of wear and tear and a lot of direct sunlight, and wanted to make sure that we kind of captured all that just in the general look and the textures of everything being kind of really worn and really kind of nicely kind of broken in. And then also in terms of just the color palette, like wanted to make sure that we were getting kind of like, I think I read one review and it called it like a Dust Bowl noir, and that kind of is pretty
Right.
adequate to what I'm thinking.
Right.
Where yeah, you want those kind of Dust Bowl colors, you want those kind of things. So we were like, okay, there's, we're gonna make it art noir, but we wanted to both kind of speak to the landscape and speak to the area with all these browns and yellows and kind of darker greens even in these colors, but at the same time,
Use a lot of
yeah, a lot of
Yeah.
she probably got tired by like the end of it. But and then yeah, and then also, but like kind of slightly referencing the new Hollywood stuff too. So it's like, okay, this color palette that, and like in a way kind of collapses the past and the present into one thing, or kind of should feel a little bit more timeless like that. So the noir did kind of influence it
Yeah.
a bit, just in thinking back to these past projects and how we kind of wanted to reference them visually a bit. So,
Yeah, I think Tulsa is such an interesting backdrop for this too, because it's not expected. Like it's not like, oh, they're in Austin, or oh, they're like it's nice to be in a different city with with some shows and see like, oh, what's going on there? Like what's going on there? I mean, you guys did a fantastic job with that little main street and everything. I'll get to that, but
yeah,
first,
thank you.
yeah, first I want to, oh wait, no, my thing's not, oh, there we go. These curtains.
Yeah.
These curtains, which are featured very heavily in the first couple scenes of the show, have a cowboy theme on them, and they look like they're shears. Did you have these made?
Yeah, we did have those made, and it was sort of like a last minute decision. We knew we want to do like a double sheer versus like a very like thick, heavy curtain because like RTP is so amazing with lighting. We're like, okay, let's give like multiple options here. But the sheer, we're like, okay, we'll do two sheers, and then we're like, okay, we'll print one with like a cowboy icon on it. And then we're like, well, why not also add like the rope W
Yeah.
for wash? I don't know if you can tell in there, but
Yeah.
those ropes actually ropey W's.
Oh,
And so
I don't know if I
I
can.
think like maybe one person was like, "Whoa, what a coincidence that that's a W." We're like, "No coincidence."
Right, right. That's on purpose. When we have control of things, we can really like zoom in and
Yeah.
make everything so
Yeah.
perfect.
It was fun because, we wanted to do something where it's like, okay, I think a lot of times you think about noir, you might think about like, and he's kind of like a cloistered away, rich person in his mansion or his ranch. And you might think, oh, okay, yeah, thick curtains, like that makes sense. But then
Yeah.
we're like, oh, we don't really want to do that. We want to do something that feels a little bit different and also like speaks to this particular family and kind of almost like dared each other into doing the cowboy and then like the W lasso and then like all the different stuff.
Kind of fun in that way. Like there's room for like play and some like kitschiness here and like a lot of ways to hide some fun Easter eggs because it is like a noir thriller crime. So we're like, well, let's play into like hiding all these little things. Like it very feels like the theme of the show. So
Yeah.
not many people like catch all the little things we did, but
Thank you for
but
catching
thanks
it.
for catching
Yeah.
it.
Oh, that was the first thing. And this is actually, I mean, I had to stop and screen grab this. This isn't like, I'm like, sometimes I see things and I'm just like, I'm taking a picture of that if I ever interview this person. And then I had to like look back on my phone for things. But this, as soon as I saw it, I was like, I gotta ask about that because it's so unusual and it's so perfect for the characters. So bravo for that. I love it. I love it.
Oh, thank you.
His whole office is really good, like all the books and the furniture selections and everything. It's an interesting set.
Yeah, this office was like sort of half of a build because it didn't have bookshelves or anything like that when
Mhm.
we scouted it. And so that was all put in by
Yeah.
art department and construction and
Yeah.
Nice.
Exactly. We kind of really fell in love with that sort of overall building and that mansion, that location, and then, kind of backed our way into this office and then had
which
to
also
kind of
didn't
build
have
it up.
doors on it. So like the
Yeah.
doors you see, those really
Oh,
cool like ones that sort of accordion out in that way, that was also part of the build for the
nice.
Yeah,
Nice.
fun construction.
And
Yeah.
this location of this house is inside Tulsa or outside? Where was it?
It's like an hour north of Tulsa, actually. It's pretty close to where they shot Killers of the Flower Moon, up in, what is the name of the county again?
Pasca?
I think it's not Pasco, but it's kind of like a large rent. Oh, it's in Bartlesville. Sorry, yeah, it's Oklahoma viewers and listeners will know that it's in Bartlesville. Won't hold me to task for that. No, it's kind of up there, and it's on like this very large rancher's property that he kind of took us around and showed us the whole colorful history of his property and of his
Nice.
classic car collection and all these other things that you couldn't get away. And he had a book that he had made of his property also, and he
Wow.
wouldn't let
And then he let a
anyone
shooting crew in there?
with
Not smart, dude.
it. Exactly.
Not smart.
No.
One of your main hub of the show is this bookstore that he, partly owns and runs. Doesn't really run. But this I was so astonished when I saw your location photos of how you transformed it from this empty store space, which is ridiculous, and but had a nice ceiling. But
Yeah,
then
the ceiling.
yeah,
the ceiling.
and then to see your renderings of how are giving notes and how you want it to be so dense and so alive with books, and then seeing the end product of how you interpreted that, and what was it, 30,000 books? I don't know. It's like a ridiculous amount of books you had.
Well, like 5,000, maybe
5,000.
maybe closer to 10. Yeah, depending on, but yeah.
So, were you renting books? What were you doing here? Like, how long from when you got the location till they shot? Like, what's your prep on this? It's a large dress.
Well,
It's a large dress.
yeah, no, it was a big dress, definitely. It was a huge dress that department killed it. But we kind of, when I first started scouting for this and for the other locations, we knew that it wanted to be like all very, very geographically linked. And Sterling had it in the script that it was, all within a block or a block and a half of real estate. So we kind of started looking for these spaces where we could just build our own kind of sets into them. And
Which
Sterling is it's all kind of loose in terms of blocking. It's all kind of loose in terms of, there's a photo of me working hard also.
Yeah.
So, so, but yeah, so, we kind of knew that we really wanted it to be out in the world. We really wanted it to kind of be out in a real space where you could see the street outside, and, you could kind of have people walk in and out.
I have a picture of that because I do think it's fantastic of how you took over this whole street. Hold on.
Yeah.
Yeah, we made it kind of a little backlot there.
Yeah, I mean, with the perfect little backdrop, I mean, how long were you taking over this side of town or this like, chunk of town?
Yeah, I mean, really, so
Currently.
we still hold the leases on all these buildings,
Wow.
actually. So
That's a
these
good
sets are still
that's a
standing.
good thing. That's a
Yeah.
good thing.
So,
That's a season 2 right there. No.
yeah, exactly. No, it took us, we went and did the pilot, and that was probably, quick pilot prep, maybe like 5 weeks total, 4 weeks total, something like that. And I found the locations pretty quickly. Sterling was very into them, and then we realized, kind of, I had planned out what we could build each space into, and then did that for the pilot. Had that kind of built out and dressed, and then it kind of, we kept the lease for a year and just kept the spaces kind of locked up, and then while we went from the pilot to the main series a year later, and then kind of opened them up
Wow.
again. That's the thing. And then, at the end of this season, we kind of locked them up again. So now they're kind of just standing there. And people, I guess maybe now that the show is out, it won't happen. But so many people, according to our locations people, stopped by the bookstore and were saying, when is this place going to open?
Yeah.
And
Gotta
we
look
keep
what's
using
in
it.
there.
We had the door open because we were, dressing it for forever.
Yeah.
And so many people just like wandered in and were like looking around. And sometimes we're like, no, let's just let them see.
Yeah, let's
Yeah.
just, yeah.
That is such a compliment sometimes when they're like, when people walk into a place that you've transformed and they like are walking into their local coffee shop and now it's like a huge bookstore and they're like, they get
think
so
it's
confused. It's like,
real.
first of all, how did you slip through our crack security? And then, and then secondly, like, you got to get out of here. Sorry. But yeah.
I mean, the bookstore was a real dream because it's like in between jobs, I'll take road trips, and I love to just check out a bookstore in whatever kind of town I end up in. And I'm always taking photos of what are the weird signs they have, how do they lay things out, like, how do they kind of have their own little universe there. It just feels like every independent store like that is somebody's own little universe. And so to be able to take all of that and like bring it into Lee's space, was kind of a dream to be able to lay out our own bookstore. And the books, we kind of laid it out and thought through the configuration of it, in the way that it made sense that his character would, probably a little bit less messy than he would, but I wanted to kind of lay the shelves out so that had a lot of depth in the store, and that so that you could kind of look down the aisles, and also sort of just get a lot of the sort of longer lens shots also that we were talking about in the beginning. And if they had the opportunity to kind of have some foreground with the shelving, or we built a little office space into the back also kind of behind the shelves, that we knew we'd never really used, because Lee's office space, as everything else in his life, is just like overrun with a huge pile of books. But we
Right.
just wanted to put that there just to give them something to shoot through and something to give a little bit more depth to the space. And then with the books, I'll let Tafv talk about it, but we sourced thousands of books from gardeners, mostly handpicked, most of them just like.
So Lee, I'm sure like the story. Ethan's character is based off a real life guy, Leroy Chapman, who passed in 2015, and he ran a real bookstore similar to this, which is what we're basing our visuals off of, called Oak Tree. And he ran it with his best friend, this guy named Sean, who's still a Tulsa local, and who was kind enough to really like be in the thick of it with us from the beginning.
Nice.
Him like, what was Lee listening to? What was he wearing? What kind of books was he reading? And he happened to at the time work at Gardner's Books, this great used book place in Tulsa. And I was like, I will hang out with you and we will just like handpick anything that Lee actually like you guys would have had in your store. And he had such a blast, and we picked like thousands of books, and a lot of them actually, some were from gardeners and a lot of them were donated from friends of his in the community that either had his actual book still like as a keepsake that they were on loan
Oh,
to
wow.
us, and then books of theirs that they were like, oh, Lee would have read this had he been alive the past 10 years. And so like there's a lot of newer stuff in there too, being like, if Lee were here, like this is definitely what he'd be reading. And in the case, we were like just trying to do nods to some things we've done before, like a vintage copy of Housemaid of Dawn, which is a Res Dogs ref.
Right.
Also in that case, see on the top, there's a copy of Someone Cry for the Children, which there's a very famous Native American forensic artist, this guy named Harvey Pratt, who we worked closely with on Res Dogs. And so that's the book of the case that he did like these
Oh,
very
wow.
famous sketches for. And so we're just trying to tie in, as we always do, the community as much as possible. And it makes it that much more fun. There's a copy of Shalako Indian boarding school graphic novel on there that another artist that we worked a lot with on Res Dogs made that. And so it's just trying to feature anything that has a connection to anyone, whether it's Lee's friend, someone we've worked with before, an artist in the community. It just makes it feel much more
Oh
alive
yeah,
that
it's
way.
alive.
Fun to
Yeah.
source things that way versus just buying, random boxes from Goodwill or something.
Yeah.
Well, I think there's a big difference between like doing an old bookstore and then something that's alive, like something that's still like thriving and people are coming in
Yeah.
and buying stuff and you've got and like newer stuff in there, like newer posters or new like people are still switching stuff around on that corkboard.
Mhm.
So
Yeah,
that's
like
Yeah.
the Black Wall Street book, that's sort of like their featured book. It seems like they
right.
keep on the counter. That's a local guy who's friends with everyone, and he was so
Yeah.
beyond excited.
So
that-
excited to be featured.
Yes, so excited to be featured, and
Yeah.
it's just that's what makes it fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Back
And
behind
then
the counter.
did you have any problems with clearances?
Well, so I mean, like actually thinking about like that back wall that's like behind the glass case right there, that kind of became sort of a place where almost like
So
a wall of
hero.
honor for like Tulsa artists for those kinds of things. And so we basically like we were putting up artwork from Larry Clark, Tulsa photographer, which is like that bigger poster. That's the kind of guy, the white poster in the middle there. And then we were recreating some artwork like that smaller kind of revolt poster that's like a black and white kind of screen print in the lower right hand of the wall there is something that Leroy Chapman, the kind of character, the person who inspired Ethan's character, he had really screen printed things in his lifetime, and one of them is a very close replica. One of them is a really close piece like that, and so we kind of replicated it or came as close to it as we could with clearances. And
Yeah.
so clearances were always, it's always one of those things where we don't ever want to use like stock art, or we don't ever want to use anything that's not connected to to the project or to us. So for the most part, it's really like we're getting the stuff from the artists that we know or who like
You can sign off.
Yeah.
which is it can be challenging in terms of like, okay, we got to track this person down because they said yes and they're very excited, but they
Also, don't have an email.
Yeah.
And they live like sticks of Oklahoma.
Exactly. So we gotta send somebody to out there with the release to like get it signed, do the thing.
The portrait actually that's above the record player there, I found that on Facebook Marketplace, which is how I source a lot of stuff in Oklahoma. Because as you know, there's no prop houses, fabrication,
No.
can't turn that around. And that's a sketch that my grandpa had done on a
wow.
placemat that this guy that lived 2 hours outside of Tulsa had enlisted on Facebook Marketplace. And so
Yeah.
I went, and it turns out he had a ton of my grandpa's art and been
It's
collecting it, but
crazy.
I know. I was like, what are the odds? And I was like, how much? He's like, $50. I'm like, got it.
I would have said, I'll give you 50 cents. It's my grandfather's. I would have said, how about you
Yeah.
give me money? How about that?
Yeah.
Pay me.
Yeah. That's
Now that he's seen the trailer, he's been like, it's so featured in the trailer. He's like, oh man, I should have asked for him.
well,
So yeah, I found that on Marketplace. And then so much of the background stuff, like the gack in the back, is actually Lee's personal things from boxes that his sister had bought
wow,
for us.
that's awesome.
Baby pictures of him. There's his old receipts on there, old like punk flyers that him and his friends had done from a show like 20 years ago. So much of that stuff is actually like the real pieces. Like there's real Polaroids on there of
crazy.
him and his sister. That sweet picture of like the kid, like the robot like drawing, like the
Yeah.
kid drawing, actually a drawing from his son when his son was much younger. So that's like a real
Yeah.
family piece there. And so we just really tried to tie in every single detail has a meaning to somebody. We truly never were stock imaging anything or
Yeah.
putting
The,
anything in
the
there.
actors must have loved that. I mean, walking
Yeah.
into this like treasure trove of character.
Well, I mean, that's kind of the whole thing is like, I feel like we kind of got into this on reservation dogs a little bit, but like, I just think of it as, okay, well, like, yes, like we're concerned what the camera's going to see, but it's also, really about like, what are the actors and the directors and the
Yeah.
people who are going to stop by and just everybody who's in the room, like, what do they feel when they're in the space? And so try to create these spaces where there are like so many details that the camera couldn't possibly even capture them all, but just so that when the people come into it, they're like lost in
Yeah.
this kind of seamless world of it. And Ethan was really, excited by like this location specifically and like seeing, kind of his character's, brain on display with all these
Yeah.
things. And he actually asked us if he could put up a couple of things behind the counter himself. And he put up like a playbill or two from a Sam Shepard play that he had directed and like another play that he had directed. So we kind of had that up there also a little bit later in the season. And yeah, he was, I mean, for me, it's like I think we probably drove the lead man a little bit crazy. We had an amazing lead man, Marcus Whitman, is that guy. But we were like, I was very insistent upon like the sections have to be like true. The books have to be true to the sections in the store. Like
Right.
it can be a little bit floppy, Lee's a little bit madcap, but it's got to be anybody could walk down and pull something out of Oklahoma history or out of like the Woody Guthrie section. It's all got to make sense in that. And
There's
so I
an
think Ethan just
annoyance to that, but there's also like, well, we're making it easy for ourselves. You know what I mean? Like we know we have this section, we know we have this like it's a bitch in the beginning, but then like that type of organization realism, it's hard to get sometimes, but once you have it on, it makes things a lot easier when you're redressing. Like I'm sure you have to move those shelves a lot for camera, like so it makes it easier to kind of.
Yeah, no, definitely. Yeah, I know there is a lot of, we built those like the shelves that are against the wall, like next to the counter there, those are all on wagons. And so those all kind of like are wild walls too. And the shelves that we built, for the middle of the room, those are all obviously on wheels also. So there is a
So,
lot of moving those things around for the onset crew.
but you
So yeah, so
use the whole space, or did you bring
we
it
did,
through
yeah,
use the whole
yeah.
space?
Those two cutouts on the right, we kept those, so that's where our bookshelves that are wild are. So we would pull those out so like camera could be in there, move stuff around, and then put those shelves back
Because
in.
Yeah.
there's columns in the existing space of this photograph we're looking at, but before picture. So I was wondering if you did use the whole width of the location. That's
We
great.
did, yeah.
That's great.
It's yeah, it's kind of a little bit in this photo in the location photos, it looks wider than it actually is. And so just being in there, we're like, yeah, we kind of have to use this entire width to get
Yeah.
into it. Which was nice. I mean, it, kind of allowed us to bring in our own walls and bring in our
Yeah.
own treatments and everything, but still
I mean,
utilize the space.
the density and bookshelves take up a lot of room. So yeah.
I know exactly. That was yeah, exactly. That was
Um, and then you carry this sort of craziness of his mind out into his little apartment here. Can you
yeah,
talk
we
about
did.
can you talk about the first of all the feeling of his apartment and being very like unfinished, and then how much of the writers were involved in doing this, like like it's I always call it like a murder board because I did bones and everything, so it was always a murder board to
Yeah.
me, but it's not, it's an information board because he's a detective, right?
Yeah,
Well, he's a
exactly. No.
writer. He's a writer detective, kind of. Yeah.
Yeah, that's kind of how I thought of it in general. It's like, okay, it's he is a writer and he's a journalist, so it's kind of his truth board or his kind of like information board where he's kind of putting all the facts together for these articles that he's going to write about it.
It was very
But
analog. It's
yeah,
very old school.
that's probably some of my own sensibilities seeping into that also. But uh, But no, I mean, in the script, it had, Lee's apartment is supposed to be above the bookstore. It's just like a cramped space that he kind of, occupies or kind of squats in because he doesn't have another place to be, essentially. And it's almost like overflow from the bookstore up there. And so when we were scouting, we scouted, this block that had a space that we could make into the bookstore, a space that we could make into the tax law office, a space for the record store, a space for the diner, and then I was like, well, let's look upstairs, and we looked upstairs, and there were just these kind of unfinished apartments like these that were, pretty derelict
Jackpot.
and were pretty far down. And the owner was gonna kind of renovate at some point, but we were like, please don't. We can actually do this the way that's in the script. It's supposed to be above the bookstore. It will be above the bookstore, and it was nice. It was funny. We actually like So we kind of embraced this raw space and did some things to reveal kind of even more textures, like, some of the brick, and then, did our scenic treatments to make it seem even a bit more derelict. But it, already was kind of very unfinished. And we kind of embraced that idea of like, yeah, it's a raw space, and it is a place where he has, his daughter come and stay with him, and he wants to make it a safe space and a nice space for her. But at the same time, like, even though he's trying his hardest, really his life is dominated by, this impulse to find the truth, and this impulse to kind of, pursue these stories, which is why, like, the thing that takes up the most space in his apartment is this kind of info board or kind of truth board
Yeah.
like that. And it's funny, actually, we shot that on the pilot, and then we came back. And when we came back to do the main series, the guy had renovated the apartments, so he'd made them like quite nice. And we're like, well, thanks a lot, locations. But also, like, so we were like, okay, we had to take a couple steps back and demolish some walls and kind of bring it back to this place where it was, quite derelict, and quite kind of an improvised living space. But yeah, I mean, I would literally talk for hours about this board, because and
Got
people are
really deep into the conspiracy. We all started to worry about it after a
people,
while.
yes, people were tired of hearing me talk about it. But I think it really was basically like they kind of said, it's like Lee's brain kind of spilled out on the walls, what the script said more or less. And but it didn't really get too deep into what actually was on there. It was
Right.
just, there's a collage of conspiracy.
Yeah.
And so like
That's what the slug read.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so I was like, all right, thanks a lot, right? So I looked back at Leroy Chapman's kind of like what articles, the inspiration for Ethan's character had written in real life, and his kind of biggest article is he wrote one about this guy named Tate Brady, who was like a modern founding father of Tulsa, that had the Tulsa Arts District was named the Brady Arts District. The biggest theater in town was called the Brady Theater, and his house was like kind of a landmark. And so Leroy Chapman wrote this article that kind of meticulously constructed a case where he pointed out that Tate Brady actually, was a member of the Ku Klux Klan, had like Confederate linkages, and also was like a big part of, or participated in the Tulsa Race Massacre in 1921. And so he led to his legacy being reevaluated, and like his name being taken off the theater, his name being taken off the arts district. And that was kind of like a big thing that he was known for. So we said, okay, well, let's make that the centerpiece of this collage, and let's kind of show evidence that shows him putting that article together and shows him putting these pieces together. And then I looked for his other articles. He wrote one about, Lowdown City, which is this white supremacist compound outside of Tulsa that has some linkages to the Oklahoma City bombing. So that's a section of the collage on the far end. And, kind of the whole Osage Hills murders, about, land being taken from indigenous people, which kind of is covered in Killers of the Flowers Moon and Killers of the Flower Moon. That was also something where, that's a piece of the collage too. So me and a graphic designer just meticulously assembled all these pieces of evidence that you would need to write these stories, and then kind of collage them there. And yeah, by the end of it, I think everyone was pretty concerned about my sanity. And I was pretty concerned, and it was just like, I think when we opened the setup and I explained it, like, okay, so you start in the left-hand corner and it's this conspiracy, this thing leads to this thing, and like went through it for like a good 15-20 minutes of just people walking in and out of the room while I was talking about it, people just being like,
Video of Brandon on a spiel, and the DP's truly just
Everybody else went to Crafty while you explained your murder board.
exactly. So yeah, but that's all to say. It really was meticulously detailed.
No, it looks,
Kind of,
I mean, I think that's a hard thing too, because sometimes it looks fake. Like
yeah,
I've done things, and then designers or directors will come in. No, I want, it should look like this. Like, we don't overlap things and blah blah blah. And I'm like, that's not how people do it. They're in a rush. They want the primary thing to be seen. They don't care if it hides this or
He's
that.
not the kind of character
Yeah.
who has red string and is tying it.
Yeah, no.
This is not this guy,
yeah,
No.
yeah, exactly. And nobody else is really supposed to be in this space seeing it. Like, it's not like
Right.
he's presenting to other people. This is just like his notes in his mind, like up on the wall for him to stare at it and work things out. So, so we tried to keep it as, and we try to keep it as kind of like detailed in that way as possible. It, should feel like somebody's thought process, and hopefully that distinguishes it from,
Yeah.
kind of other things we've seen. But
And
there was some talk about red string
Yeah.
at certain moments. We were just like, you can't do it. I'm sorry. Yeah.
And there's just like a sparse, eclectic look that you've given him of like, he doesn't really care about anything. He's just living. Like, he needs a
He's
chair, he
just
needs a
living,
desk, he
yeah.
needs a bed, and he's done.
We did try and give him some like sweet personal detail. Again, we were working with like his family and friends so much, and they were so gracious to just give us like boxes of things they had, like his old clothes. And in that last slide, you have like the pillowcase, or is actually a T-shirt that Lee had screen printed because he was always screen printing shirts, and so that's an original T-shirt, and we just used that as the pillowcase, which I stole as an idea from my father, who never owned a pillowcase but always used his T-shirts. And then on the right on the wall, there's one of those really sweet, like Christmas stockings, like the classic kind that's just pinned there, which was actually, it says dad on it. That was from his son in real life. So that's a piece that his son had given him. And, you know, obviously in the show, he has a daughter. And so it was easy to just play this as a craft
Yeah.
that she had made for him. There's a dead plant in the window that
Yeah,
truly
yes.
his mother had been holding on to for 10 years, being like, this was Lee's plant and it's been dead, but I can't throw it away. And so we put it in the windowsill. So it has a really nice feature when he wakes up
It's
one
kind
time in the
of
morning.
creepy and insane how much shit they held on for this guy. Like, your dead plant?
His stuff. He was such a character and kind of such a Tulsa icon. And the more I got to know him through all these friends and family, I'm like, wow, this guy has a very lasting impact here.
Yeah. We kind of wanted to also just like, make sure again we're keeping it as specific as possible and give it like a really specific sense of place, which is always the goal, but especially in this show, like making it close to Tulsa. So, if we have like fast food cups, it's going to be from a QT, a quick time,
Right,
or
right.
something like that.
We're like, okay, Sonic was such a Res Dogs thing. We would
Yeah.
get Sonic. Sonics are like, okay, Lee is Whataburger and QT.
Exactly. Not a Sonic's man. Yeah.
Your character always has a favorite fast food place to draw from. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm really fascinated that you had to redo all this. I mean,
Yeah.
that's
It was
crazy.
It
Yeah.
was really funny to like, go through all the different scenic photos and the references and be like, oh, this is what it was like on the pilot. Okay, so actually that needs to look a little worse up there. And like, this is like, actually we need these holes back.
There was a full wall that was built here in this shot to like separate, and we're like, you guys got to tear down.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
We can tore it up. Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
the
The
guy
kitchen
should have
unit
known.
related.
Don't do it.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. They should have listened. They should have listened to the locations department when they said to hold
Yeah.
it.
And all the books in here, differently from the books in the bookstore, his best friend in real life, Mike Mason, who ran this land press that we reference in our show as the Heartland Press,
Mhm.
he had a bunch of Lee's books, like truly hundreds of them in his office still. And so all the books that you see in Lee's apartment are all the books that his best friend has held on to. So
Wow.
we kept everything like very organized for people, like so everyone's getting exactly their book back and everything.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was
everything
just
in
gonna
the-
ask that of like, did you have to give
It
back the
was
dead
like
plant between
one
seasons?
of those things where we just make it extra hard for ourselves
Yeah.
in terms of decorating, when we could have just easily bought, a
Right.
1,000 used
Yeah.
books somewhere else. But that's just not the point of the show, and that's not how Brandon and I like to work. And
Yeah.
I think it makes it so much more fun and meaningful and emotional for the people that are contributing a lot of their time and their stories to us, and want to honor that.
Yeah.
Surprisingly, I think everybody got everything back, right? I mean, I don't. Yeah.
Yeah.
I step away from that part of it.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Yeah. I have a secret thing on the wall that I reference to my lead man all the time. I don't give a fuck about the wrap. That's my that's my
Yeah.
motto. I don't care about the wrap.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, our rap is very different. Our rap involves a lot of thank you cards, a lot of gifts, a lot of hand driving things to the outskirts of Oklahoma.
That's all the set deck department. By that
it's-
point, I'm already.
It's such a big, truly big part of my department in this show, though, because like I said, we're not in LA, Atlanta, New York. We're not working with prop houses ever.
Yeah.
Everything we're getting sourced out in the world, and specifically from people we're connected to through the community, and they lead us to someone else and someone else. And so it really creates this amazing like backstory happening
Yeah.
that's even more interesting than like what's happening in front of the camera. Like you have no idea how this stuff even got here. Everything's so special, but it does make for a very different kind of rap. But it's so fun. Stacy,
Oh,
who's been
yeah.
on my team since day one, it's her specialty. She writes all the cards. She buys.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, it's really amazing.
But it's also people are generous, and usually, and generous with information and generous with items sometimes, like when they really get into it and they know that it's going to be appreciated. they want to be a part of it to make to make our jobs look real too, which is always
Yeah,
great.
yeah. I mean, they're helping us so much, and we just do our best to honor everything they're giving us and all the stories they're sharing with us, which are, especially for this project, very, very personal. And then asking permission, can we somehow put something in the set that pertains to the story that you just told me? And they say
Yeah,
absolutely.
it's
So,
personal.
we've been getting texts. We got one yesterday from his ex-wife in real life, just saying you guys did such an amazing job. Yeah,
Yeah.
Leroy's ex-wife. And so it's just, yeah, everyone's really feeling
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
it
That's
Yeah.
about
always
it.
awesome.
Oh yeah.
The hangout, the diner.
Yeah. Sweet
That's
Emily's.
that's so
Um,
I loved the wallpaper. The
oh,
wallpaper
thank
is
you.
fantastic. So did you
Thank
print that? Did you make that?
We did. So, Sweet Emily's again, it was, we kind of we kind of built our set into this existing space so it could be part of this geography. And we ripped out the countertop. We, brought in the flooring, brought in all the wall treatments. And I think we actually kept that tin ceiling in the one room. But, everything else was kind of these construction and scenic elements that we needed before we could decorate, obviously.
Yeah.
But the wallpaper was, we got to a point where I knew that we wanted a combination of wallpaper and some kind of like a wood paneling to give it some texture, and to really be able to like take some age. And the wallpaper that I was thinking of just had in mind some kind of a pastoral scene type of thing, the sort of thing where it's like it could just be background, fade into the background, but then like if you're there at 2 a.m. by yourself, like drinking a cup of coffee, it could amuse you for like a minute or two,
Yeah.
like through it all to see these scenes. And so we talked about that and very quickly came to the thing of yes, like I'd like to make our own, and then kind of got to the point where talking it over with Sterling, we had the idea of like, okay, well, what if we just kind of as an Easter egg, put a scene from Reservation Dogs in there, and then it can't be too obvious. It's not something that wants to call attention to itself, but again, if it's something that you happen to be there focusing on, like you can kind of see it. But otherwise, if you're not focusing on it, you would never notice it. And he really loved that idea, and so we kind of got into having a great illustrator, Mary Hayes, do some hand illustrations for us. I picked some moments from different Reservation Dogs episodes and picked some kind of specific sort of scenes. And then we did the illustrations, laid out the pattern, and then had it all printed locally by this place called Blue Stem. And they had never printed anything for film and TV before, but they were really excited once we explained what was going on and
Right.
once they, understood that we weren't crazy or that we are crazy, but on the way that they were thinking originally. And yeah, so we got it printed and kind of aged it and made sure that it had that kind of nicotine yellow quality to it, and then put it up. And I didn't really tell anybody besides Sterling, and we didn't really tell anybody besides Sterling about it, and obviously the art department, but outside of the art department, and so much of the crew on this show is Reservation Dogs crew. So when people came into this set to open it up, they were pretty floored, and I think people were laughing. There were tears too. Everybody was just really excited to kind of have this little Easter egg and like have this little piece of the a previous thing that had been so meaningful come into like this world of the show.
Yeah.
So
No, that's
yeah,
great to tie it together for people who watched it and who appreciate little Easter eggs.
yeah,
That's always a big thing. People are always
yeah.
looking. Always
No,
looking.
definitely. I
And when the
did.
crew gets excited about something, you nailed it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
exactly. And like, that made, and then that gets Ethan and everybody else, all the other actors kind of, excited about those details too and get into it, which is nice. Yeah, I mean, the flooring, for the dining room, we wanted to do like a low pile carpet just because it's got to be that kind of, there. I've seen that in diners in
It's
Tulsa
the
as well.
nice
So
part of the diner.
yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
like your dining room.
The formal dining for
Yes,
sure.
yes.
Exactly.
Formal dining.
Uh, Yeah, and the checkered floor that's kind of closer to the actual diner counter
Yeah.
that we built in. It's again one of those things where it's like, a little bit kind of collapses past and present, also shows the age of the space and the texture of the space, and kind of gets into this sort of dusty color palette too.
So
So
what was your timeline of this before picture of which looks nothing like what you've ended up with? How long
yeah,
did you have to construct and then decorate?
I think that we had probably about maybe okay. I want to say that by the time that we got locked the location, everything was agreed to, and we kind of were talking about, and we kind of got the specifics of everything there, and then I kind of designed it, had the concept art, and had everybody sign off on that and excited about it. Maybe we had about like I don't know 2 weeks, right, to sort of like build it and then to decorate it, something like that.
Wow. Yeah.
So
Tight.
it was pretty quick. Yeah, it was pretty quick.
Quick.
Yeah, I'm not. There were definitely,
Some hair moments on that one.
And
well,
you filled the arch, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
fill the arch. So that's kind of yeah, we had kind of filled out with a plug. And then, you know, what else? And then the light fixtures, obviously, and this
The
kind of thing.
bank hats and
Yeah, the bank cats also.
that was, I think, the hardest part for
Yeah.
that was a big sweating moment for set deck.
Yeah, but then
Because quantity is very hard to
Quantity is
find.
very hard to find in the color that you want, or
Exactly. It was, I mean, this was it. We basically had one last day to find this because it had to be installed like the day before.
Yeah.
And of course, Oklahoma. There's always a miracle that happens in Oklahoma, and we ended up finding these.
Which were exactly the color that we were looking for.
Exactly the color that.
Yeah,
Wow.
which is amazing.
Exactly the count.
Kind of like the thing that we've been holding out for, like, okay, I feel like this is gonna happen, and it did. And then construction scenic had their hands full with the walls and with the everything else at the time. So we kind of were like, all right, this is something we want to source rather than build, and yeah, it just kind of came through. But it was, it was a tight thing, but it was also the sort of thing where we're kind of making that little backlot almost where the Houdel bookstore is next to it, the tax law office.
Yeah.
So we're kind of attacking these things,
Next to
at the same time, knowing that once they get there to shoot the bookstore, well, we're not really going to be working on the diner because, this is going to be swarmed with these things. So that kind of, gave a little more a sense of an urgency to like, even though this isn't on camera for a couple days, after bookstore, kind of once they get here, it's almost like pencils.
Yeah,
down time.
you have to be done. You can't be making
Yeah.
noise. You can't be drilling and everything while they're 2 doors down.
Yeah, exactly.
No, that's
Yeah,
a really
but-
good point of like owning that block as your like backlot, but then it all has to be done before they get there. The whole thing.
Yeah, exactly. We kind of walked ourselves in that situation, which, turned out great. And there are some kind of small details in Sweet Emily's also, like, where we basically had a clock. We kind of made our own version of this or fabricated our own kind of clock that says Tulsa time on it, which is sort of a reference to Dremmelfish. Yeah, that Sterling was very excited about. And yeah, we, up behind the counter again, same thing, like, kind of collected family photos from people around town. Members, yeah. Oh yeah, picture my grandfather's in there.
Yeah.
So, and just the dollar bills on the column, there's a phone up the wall. And I think, it's always like about going in at the last minute and saying, okay, like, well, somebody, let's write some phone numbers next to the phone as if like, there's some numbers that people like to call or this kind of things, just to really ease into those lived in details. But the funniest thing too is this space is like across the street from it. You can't like totally see it in any of these stills, but there's a storefront, and we wanted to make it into a smoke shop, like kind of a vape shop. Sterling thought that was like appropriate for this neighborhood in town that's kind of like, a little bit backsliding or a little bit like stagnant, and this newer smoke shop. And so we covered over the storefront was a by appointment escape room. And so they were very, very sensitive about us turning it into a smoke shop. So we had to put the dressing up and take it down and the sign and everything every single day.
Which is a lot. We have to redo that front store. across
Yeah,
the street.
which is fine. But the funny thing is that when actually Google Maps was coming through Tulsa, we realized at the end of the season that the owner of the store had given us so much grief about like them not wanting it to be seen publicly as this, and then on the Google Maps thing, it had captured it with our banner up there.
No
with everything.
way. That is fantastic. That
I know, it was quite funny.
what timing of that?
I
Of
know,
like
yeah,
the
it's
good and it's all your sets on there. How great is that?
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
Oh my God, that's great. You're influencing Google images. I mean, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
You're messing up the maps.
Yeah, she was not pleased. The escape room owner not pleased, but we thought it was great. Yeah.
She'll probably complain. There's many swing sets in the first couple episodes, and you've just given great depth to them and great like character to all of the places that they go. Were you like, was there a lot of changes for the swing sets, or was it like, oh, thank God we found this place, it's great?
Yeah.
This one, a little bit of both, because it was a antique store, sort of overflown, but it was sort of not the antiques that our character Ray would have. Like it was a little more dusty grandma, and so we could sort of like borrow here and there, but we mostly undressed the space and brought in stuff that he would be.
Yeah.
Antiquing for, and like that you can see this AC Blue Eagle, which is a native artist, that picture and cup set is the set that he's eyeing when they're at the estate sale together at the
Mm.
Washburn. And so we brought that in as if he ended up purchasing that,
Yeah.
putting it in his store. So
Yeah, we
That's
tried to
great.
dress in those details that are kind of like you might see in another set, or you might, or see it in another kind of story that we're telling in the
He's a
episode.
good
So
character. He's a
he
yeah,
he's
is,
a
the
good
yeah.
best. He's
character
the
to
best guy in
yes.
the whole world. We love Michael.
Yeah.
He was really fun and just a really great character. Yeah.
In
Uh,
your like newspaper office, you have these fantastic graphics here, and then in the other guy's office, what was your inspiration for putting these giant graphics as backdrops in the rooms?
oh yeah, no. I mean, this is one of my favorite sets too, the Heartland Press Office. Which is kind of closely modeled on the real magazine that Leroy Chapman wrote for, and that Sterling actually made video content for, and kind of wrote for also, called This Land. And so we, basically kind of, and as like one of those Tulsa twists of fate, also the space that we ended up shooting this in, we're like, well, is the actual office that they used for for This Land available? And it was kind of a derelict, again, like building. And so we went in there and we're like, okay, we have to, obviously kind of build our set into it and kind of dress it from the ground up, et cetera. But it seems worth it for everybody who's like remembers actually being a part of that magazine, and to come back and kind of feel that energy. And so, we leaned kind of heavily on what the actual space looked like. This mural right here is something that, sits behind the editor, and actually something very similar actually sat behind the actual editor
Mm.
of This Land. And so, we kind of were making an homage to that. And I think also in these spaces too, like for me, thinking about the Heartland Press Office, it wanted to feel like it's people who are trying very hard to like get their arms around something. People who are kind of very ambitiously trying to dig at the truth. They're
Yeah.
very ambitiously trying to do something. They're in Tulsa. They're in the Midwest, but it's kind of a running gag that the editor, this guy Elijah, kind of talks about the New Yorker. And one thing at the pitch meetings are like, oh, would they cover this in the New Yorker and everything? So it's this real sense of like, oh yes, we are here in Tulsa, but we're really kind of aspiring to show like the truth of this place, and also to measure up to these standards and to show that we have these. And so for me, I just wanted these big images that kind of felt like, oh yeah, it's almost like bursting out of this, like it's almost kind of like this sort of space is like almost not big enough to hold like the ambition, or not big enough to hold like kind of like the truth, or what these people are trying to get their hands on. So
Yeah.
that was a big part of it, and recreating that mural is something that was an element of that. And then in the main space of it, we basically wanted to cover all the walls in our fictional kind of Heartland Press issues, which is what This Land had. They were kind of so proud of their own work that they had kind of had it up on the walls to cover their own spaces, and so we wanted to recreate that. And
Yeah.
we actually went and had our graphic designer make like 10 copies of this, of our fictional Heartland Press and covers.
Based off of, we
Yeah.
happened to find a case being sold at a store
Yeah.
that had the first original 100 issues of This
Oh,
Land.
wow.
Starting with issue 1, which happened to be all signed by the original people that started
Yeah.
it. And so we had this like amazing, like, we're like, what are the odds that we found this thing? And of course, they let us borrow it. We told them what it was for. And we're like, can we borrow this for like a week and scan some
Yeah.
stuff? And of course, they said yes. They were so excited. So all the covers that our graphic designer had were sort of iterations of the exact same covers of the originals, including like that signed one, which happens to be in Elijah's office that we framed.
Yeah.
That's
As if
awesome.
their first issue, and so
Yeah.
all in homage. Yeah.
Yeah, and we had to. I mean, just in terms of printing that volume of newsprint, also in Tulsa, it's no easy matter. It's not, and we again could have like had it shipped in from New York or LA, but we again wanted to, just put the resources back into the community and also stay true to that. And so we found this newspaper, the Sapulpa Herald, a small town next to Tulsa, and it was one man who's obsessed with keeping this newspaper going in his newsprinting facility. And so we explained to him again what we are doing, and he was a little bit freaked out at first, but then he, ran off like all the newsprint for us. And the art director went over there at one point to check in and make sure it was all going well. And he was like, yeah, it really is like a place that you would think of running into when you think of somebody saying, stop the presses or hold the presses. That kind of a thing. Just in like a, this gigantic press.
That's a good location. You should tell your location guy about that. Get in there.
Yeah, so
I really liked
that was,
the black and white starkness of it too, and I don't know why, but something about it reminded me like of the '90s. like the big puff,
Yeah.
like graphic things and everything. And I just was like, that's so interesting to choose that for, I think, especially this guy who looks like he could be in the 90s. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
like,
Like, yeah, there is kind of again this almost like timeless quality to it, or it's almost like frozen in time quality to it, where it's like, yeah, there it does very much have like that 90s sentiment. You're right.
yeah,
Yeah,
I
which
love
is cool.
that. And then there's a big one on this wall too, which I couldn't grab, but another awesome character to decorate for, and like his whole store, and you got weird things going on in this office, but I think
Yeah, it's it's again, it's another one of these things where it's supposed to reflect a different aspect of Tulsa. And, Sterling really wrote this as being in North Tulsa, which is a predominantly Black neighborhood and has connections to Greenwood, which is kind of a neighborhood where the Tulsa Race Massacre happened and has a lot of history in that regard. And so, we really wanted to have a different feeling from, the rest of the sets. And we brought in this wood paneling, and we kind of, brought in this, again, like the colors that feel like this Dust Bowl noir, but kind of take a good amount of age to them also. And I wanted to do something on the one wall. It's actually, it's a wall that runs the length of the space. And so wanted to do something kind of larger and graphic that again would be like a really big read, and something that the character would want to look at every day. And so, we worked with a local artist, this artist, Alex Taman, who is a muralist in Tulsa, and he had done
oh,
some
wow.
murals in Greenwood, some murals about the Tulsa Race Massacre, different topics. And, we kind of worked together, collaborated, and came up with the imagery. And then, he was able to come in and paint it actually on the wall. And it depicts some of the important figures in the Tulsa Black community. It depicts, the Tulsa Race Massacre, and then it depicts kind of a more modern sentiment about, reparations, and sort of some of the imagery that Killer Mike's character, has present in his space. And so, yeah, I mean, that's kind of another fun thing about working in Tulsa is you get to collaborate with so many local artists. And for me, it's like, okay, if we're going to do this mural, I want somebody who's from the community that we're representing to actually be a part of it, and to actually bring their ideas to it, and to kind of bring their perspective to it, and make sure that it resonates for everyone.
How though, so did he design it and then he painted it on? Like what was the time? That sounds like a long process for
Yeah.
someone who's not in our world to comprehend. Do you know
Yeah.
what I mean?
No, definitely. It was, and that's part of the thing also is like we kind of have like, since we were there for a couple of years for Reservation Dogs, we have connections to local community artists. And so we kind of brought Alex in, and we're like, okay, so we're gonna do this piece, but it's a thing where we need to develop it in the next like 72 hours, and then apply that basically. And he was really game. And so I had a lot of references, and we kind of sat down and had some conversations, and then kind of designed it and came up with the actual illustration of it. And then I was able to talk that over with Sterling and just say, hey, does this feel right to you? And how do you feel about this and everything? And he was really into it. And then from there, we were just like, okay, so, Alex, like, and now we have this amount of time to do the rest of it, and to
Right.
allocate, and to jump in. And he kind of just came in and was like, okay, we have, I have 2 days to paint this or whatever. So I'm going to paint this in 2 days and get
That's
it done. And,
awesome.
the swirl of our construction and scenic crew is working kind of around him. And, it's just great. Everybody kind
Yeah,
of
it's not like he
understands.
had the space to himself to think.
No,
We're like, oh, let me plan this out a little bit bigger or whatever. Like
no,
he's
not at
got
all.
painters and construction workers and then lighting, and
Yes.
that's
Yes,
that's
exactly.
crazy.
I mean, that's a real testament to,
Bravo.
our construction scenic crew too. Aaron Meyer is amazing, and Dylan Baker's really good. They just come in, and they really understand what we're trying to do, and how, the kind of detail, the level of detail, and the importance to working with the community, that we kind of emphasize. So, for them, they're just like, yeah, does Alex need anything? Are we being too loud for him? Can he still do the work you were doing? And I'm like, you guys are the most considerate construction and scenic crew I feel like I've, ever kind of been around and everything.
Do
So,
you think did that rose painting back there? Is
That's what I
that
wanted to point out. So
yeah.
that road painting, there's this guy in Tulsa. He's like a real local staple. He's the guy that lives in community housing. He goes by Mad Dog. That's his name as we all know him. But he sort of walks around the bars at night or hangs out in front of the gas station. He's always selling roses. Like that's how he's making his money. He sells roses, but everyone knows him and loves him. We don't know much about him. He's kind of a mystery. But he had started painting recently. I don't even know how we figured this out. He just was dappling and painting his roses. And Amar was like, how do we find him? I want to commission a piece from him. And I knew on the weekdays he sort of hung out at this one gas station, a QT gas station. I was like, well, I'm just gonna swing by. And he was there. And I was like, oh my goodness gracious. So I was like, Mad Dog turns out his name is Kenneth. I was like, Kenneth, can we commission a piece of art for you for the show? Because he obviously knows all of us and Sterling. And he was so honored, and he spent a week really agonizing over it. And I went to his place, and he lives with his mom, and I met his amazing mom. And
I think you
he was
gotta
so
chill
grateful.
out with
He
like talking to strangers. You're going to people's houses. You need like someone to go with you.
That's a good
I don't
point.
know. I'm
always
kind
saying,
of worried for
like,
your
you're gonna
safety
get
and trying to get some like you books and like paintings and stuff. Like you got to be careful. You know, like
I know,
my
dude.
like sometimes off of Craigslist or whatever, it's they're like we're like, all right, put your tracker on, or like make sure you check in as soon as you get back into your car, like things like that. Where in
Very
LA,
location.
we won't
Yeah.
go for this. Like,
definitely been in some. I'm like, maybe I've definitely been in a couple situations when I arrive. I'm like, what am I doing?
yeah,
Yeah.
don't do that.
It's worth it. And this piece was so special, and everyone that is in Tulsa knows who Mad Dog is. And so again, when the crew came in and they asked about this, I said that Mad Dog had painted it, and so many people could not believe it. Again, like tears, they're like, oh my gosh. And of course we paid him, and he was so overcome with emotion and so
Yeah.
grateful and so excited. And so yeah, that's a really special piece to me. And
Yeah.
that's the miss. And definitely something that our character would have.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
That's
Oh,
definitely-
yeah. To me, I'm like one of those girls on the wall painted it for him, or like
Which could be also. I know exactly. Like that makes
get
sense
your
too.
roses, like
Yeah.
Like, sometimes the backstory is even better than
Oh
Yeah.
yeah, you can't. That story's way better than what I thought. So yeah.
Yeah. No, I mean that was a really fun set in general. The Tulsa beat, like the guy who, Killer Mike's character, Cyrus, is like somebody who, just he wants to do good. He's like got this newspaper that is kind of a tabloid, but it's
Yeah.
to expose corruption and like crime and everything. So it's this thing of wanting to, show up for his community, but also he's an entrepreneur and
He's like the TMZ of the town or something.
Also, we had that like tinsel Christmas tree in the reverse shot that looked pretty like bare and sad.
Oh right, right.
We were like, oh, we love this thing. And then we were dressing it. I'm like, man, I was like, can we like get some ornaments for this, some like crappy ones? And our truck driver,
our teamster.
He actually whittles, and he was like, oh, I'll just whittle you some today. So he truly, in the day that we're dressing this, whittled us like 4 Christmas ornaments.
Yeah, exactly.
And just like made up what they were going to be, and it was just incredible. So
Yeah.
you can't see them at all, but just know that there are
Wow.
Christmas
So
from
fun.
our team.
Everybody's jumping in. I love it.
Yeah,
Everybody's got a handle in here. We talked about that. And then just like even from Res Dogs and everything, just the depth of character you guys give on sets, and the authenticity of like the characters who live there and everything. I'm a huge fan of like the way you guys work together and everything. So bravo.
Thank you so much. Yeah, no, thanks for noticing all the details.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, exactly. No, I really appreciate it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What makes the job fun.
Yeah, it does. I mean, when you get good characters is one thing, but then when you're working with someone who was real and from before, like and the subject matter and being sensitive to people, like, and you have to give all that stuff back that you've borrowed from them to make the sets look real, like there's a huge responsibility of like not only getting it right, but then treating their things right. That's a lot. It's a lot of pressure.
Yeah.
It is. I tend to get very emotionally involved.
Yeah, sometimes we back up on that, but
I end up crying a lot.
a lot of crying. No, but I mean, for us, I think it's like, I don't know, my goal is always like to create a really specific sense of place, and to create this kind of unique world. And I think that with the Lowdown, especially, we're just like, okay, we're telling the story of Tulsa. Like, we really want it to be the sort of thing where, if it could be in another show, if it could be in another world, it probably doesn't belong here. It's probably, if it has to be specific to our world and has to give it this really strong sense of place that's grounded in. And for me, for us, it was just like, okay, I really want this sort of show also where, you're seeing parts of the city and parts of Tulsa, but hopefully people are kind of leaning in and saying, oh, what's just around that corner? Or like,
Yeah. Yeah.
what's just like outside of the camera view and everything like that, or the frame. So,
Yeah.
um,
I've
like that
seen a
worked.
couple of the future episodes too, and the locations that you guys chose aren't typical, I feel, which is what you're saying. Like it's giving like a more in-depth to that city, which I think is really nice. And also these characters like really characters. Like they're characters of themselves or something. So it's fun. It's really a good
Yeah,
yeah. I really enjoyed it. I mean,
it's really fun.
I don't know, finish it out. And now I know there's a possible season 2 because you kept your set because you kept the lease on the thing.
Yeah.
That's always a good
We'll
sign.
see what people think. Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, it's like so much of the show. For me, I think, and we're talking about this, like so much of the pleasure of the show, and I think Sterling thinking about things like the long goodbye and everything. It's like you want to hang out with the protagonist. You're hanging out with
Yeah.
Ethan's character, and so we want to make sure that we're giving him this interesting world to kind of flow through and to sort of amble through, and that's fun for people also.
Did you have, what was your biggest challenge here in decorating all this?
Ooh.
Just dealing with me, probably.
Yeah.
You two seem to work great together. You're super cute. I gotta tell you that.
I guess the biggest challenge, with TV so fast paced, but we just have such amazing characters. Like that last shot of, Bondi's house. She's sort of such a fleeting character, but you want to do every character justice, especially when you're in their home and you have so little time and
Yeah.
so like bandwidth to really do justice by this person in terms of making their space. But I have the most amazing team. He has the most amazing team. We have people that really, really care on these jobs. Like truly, we have like teammates that want to work on the weekend to make things as good as possible, as do we.
Right.
So the pace is always hard, but I do feel like we put everything into this. And I think every detail like is really shot well and appreciated well. And
Yeah, the lighting is great. I have to say, there's a lot of, it seems, natural lighting, which I think really lends to like the story, which I think is really nice, especially in the bookstore. You're getting those natural lights, that big shafts of light that they're coming in the diner, and the lighting's very well done for this.
yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think it's great, and it's nice to be able to collaborate with with the DP. Mark Schwartzbart is awesome, and I think that he really is a champion also of our work, and he'll walk on and be like, oh my god, did you guys see this thing? There's this detail that they put here and everything, and
Oh,
like
that's great.
He's one of our great friends, but when we were shooting the season, he wasn't with us on the pilot. And at one point, towards the end of shooting, he came up to me and he was like laughing at something on the wall. He was like, "Wow, have you seen this? This is so funny." And I'm like, "Yes, we made this whole
Yeah.
story." He's like, "Wait, you guys made this story
yeah,
at the bookstore?" We're like,
yeah,
Yeah.
like yeah, yeah,
yes, we made that
Not
detail."
little
So
elves coming in overnight.
exactly,
It's us.
yeah,
yeah,
we're all just elves and night people. We
yeah.
don't really know how these things get made, but
No, it's always, it's always challenging on a TV timeline too. And just like with the scheduling and the tricks of the schedule, where it's like, okay, we have an actor now, so we can
Yeah.
have to shoot this. And then we don't have an actor now, so we have to push this until the future and then figure that out, and on the next block and everything. So I think, with that, it's always a challenge. But I think it's, for me, it's just a testament to, Tava, to the set deck team and to the art director and all the other kind of teammates that we have, where it's just like, yeah, everybody still maintains the same quality standards and the same level of care with everything, which is
Were
great.
you block shooting, or were you doubling up? Were you
we
We yeah, we were
doubling up.
block shooting.
doubling up?
There were some things where, yeah, not to get too deep into it, but the scheduling was such that there were, the cast is amazing, and there are so many amazing
Yeah.
people in the cast. But with that comes some availability things. So there was, one or two people who it's like, okay, we're not going to get this actor until basically the last, month of shooting. So a
Right.
lot of things would have to be pushed out of these earlier blocks and into this end block. And so we'll have to figure out how to come back to spaces. We'll have to figure out how to, utilize some other things and kind of engage in some trickery like that. But we were block shooting, so we had, I think it was 7 episodes for the season. It's 8 counting the pilot, but we
Mm.
had 7 for the season, and then we're kind of and shooting those, and I guess it was 3 different blocks, right?
Yeah.
Oh wow.
So
Yeah. That's a
um,
lot. It's double up in actor
A lot of them.
availability.
oh yeah,
It's
no,
all fun. It's all
and they
fun.
I would say those last 3 weeks were, we all really, I don't know how we did it. It was a lot of tandem days, tandems with splits. It was a lot.
I felt like the live producer and the first AD, I was like, wow, you guys are you are every single, sort of little niche like element that we could do, where it's like a tandem day and then it's like a split day and then it's like, just elements related things. But they worked it out. I mean, credit to the ADs.
Oh, I would never want to be an AD. I'd never want to be in locations.
I can't think of a worse job.
And I would never want to be an AD. But I do say to my AD sometimes, like, do you make this schedule just to fuck with us? Like, are you trying to make this the hardest on us because you know we can handle it? And most of them are like, yeah, we know our department can handle it. So yeah.
Oh, definitely. I feel like we were shooting in that paddlefish compound in the woods that's in episode 3. That's like one of those things where it was like one of our biggest endeavors, creating this whole giant space in a clearing and dragging boats out there. And I was like, okay, Josh, first AD, if there's any way that we could just not start with that, anything else,
of course.
like, no problem, got you. And then like 2 hours later called and was like, so we got to start with the paddlefish compound.
Not only that, but the week before shooting, it was a torrential snowstorm.
Oh yeah.
So the whole location got snowed out. So we were like out there with the plows and the
oh my god.
I'll make this set while it was like negative 18 by the lake there.
Yeah. Whatever could go wrong will go wrong. When you shoot like outside, I feel like even in LA, it's like we never go outside. We go outside. It rains. It never rains here. Like, it's crazy.
Definitely.
Thank you guys. Thank you guys so much. And I just love hearing all the details that you guys put in there, and really crazy details from like getting people's personal things and his actual stuff. That's amazing to me. I'm so glad that I got to speak to you about it. So thank you.
No, thank you so much. Yeah, and thanks so much for noticing the details. And
I actually noticed that.
Oh, I know. It's like, oh my god, someone actually thought about that. That's great. But yes, no, I'm not the only one looking at this. You guys, it's a really good in-depth show for design. Congrats. Yeah, 5,000 hand-picked books. That's some time on your hands. That's like, you gotta invest. That's a commitment to character. And she really, please don't go out on your own to meet strangers. It doesn't, I don't know. You gotta, like I said, you gotta tell people where you're gonna go. You gotta keep safe. But I love her commitment to getting it right, and it shows how much she is striving as a decorator, as we all do, to be true to characters, to get it right, and just loving the details and being interested in all the research. So I thank both of them for their time, and it was just great hearing about the show. It's a good show, The Lowdown on FX. So next up, I have production designer Catherine Eder, who has been on the podcast before, so you can give you a week. You can listen to her last episode. And we talk about her new film, The Man in the Basement, which premiered this week on Hulu. Very moody spaces. We're going to talk about that house. If you watch it, it's all about a house. So we're going to get into that next week. In the meantime, grab that free Set Decorator Quick Reference template. It gives you all of the templates of dining room tables, tablecloths, all that jazz if you need it. And it's handy for anyone, really, if you're planning a party, anything like that. And please rate and review if you have a moment. And if you want to become a decorator, I got the masterclass on the Decorating Pages podcast website. You can watch this episode and many more on YouTube. So you have a lot to do. I just gave you like 3 things to do. So check them all off by next episode. How about that? I hope you got an earful. I'm Kim Wanup for Decorating Pages.